everybody. Welcome to episode 21 of the Old Glory Games podcast. And if you caught us a couple weeks ago, we were talking about the top 5 greatest women's tennis players of all time. Greg and I were going through our list, and we came up with the first 2 for the most part, 2, 3. We kind of differed. Well, we're going to finish up here with the top 3, and we're going to celebrate the fact that the U.S. Open, for the first time that I can remember in a long time, we have 4 Americans in the semifinals. Now, last night, Navarro lost, but Pegula won, and we have the Fritz and Tiafoe match later on today. If you're watching this in the future, this won't make much sense unless you follow tennis closely. But that being said, I'm talking too much. Leading into this is part 2 of the greatest of all time female tennis players. Enjoy.
All right, number 3, and I think we just talked about her, Steffi Graf. So
okay.
I watched her play quite a bit. She came along towards the end of Chris Evert's career. And as I mentioned a little while ago, I think Chris Evert lost to Steffi Graf like 8 times in a row, the last 8 times she played her. And you could just tell that just physically and athletically, she just could not compete with Steffi Graf. She was just an amazing player. She won 22 major singles titles, the second most in women's singles, one since the start of the Open era. In 1968 is when the Open era started, and the third most of all time. In 1988, Graf became the first and only tennis player to achieve the Golden Slam by winning all 4 major singles titles and the Olympic gold medal. Now, I think Serena's done it since then, if I'm not mistaken.
She has a Serena Slam. She won all 4 majors, not in the same calendar year.
Okay, gotcha. And Steffi is the only tennis player, male or female, to have won each major singles tournament at least 4 times. She was ranked world number 1 in singles by the WTA, the Women's Tennis Association, for a record 377 total weeks. She won 107 singles titles, ranking her 3rd on the WTA's all-time list after Martina's 167 and Chris Evert's 157. She and Margaret Court are the only players, female or male, to win 3 majors in a calendar year 5 times. That's incredible. She's the only singles player, male or female, to have achieved a Grand Slam across 3 surfaces: grass, clay, and hard courts. Graf reached, and I apologize if I switch back and forth between pronouncing her last name Graf and Graf. It's like tomato, I guess.
Right.
So hopefully if she listens to this, I hope that she's not offended. So anyway, Graf reached 13 consecutive singles majors finals, from the 87 French Open to the 90 French Open, winning 9 of them. She won 5 consecutive singles majors and 7 out of 8 in 2 calendar years. I think from the 88 Australian Open to the 89 U.S. Open, except for the 89 French Open. She reached a total of 31 major finals in singles, and she retired at a relatively young age. I think she was only 30 when she retired. So she accomplished a lot in a relatively short period of time. Now, she married on Andre Agassi, didn't she?
Yeah, they're still married.
Yeah, okay, great. Yeah, I thought they had got married. So, yeah, I remember well watching her play. And like we mentioned a little while ago, she came along really toward the tail end of Chris Evert's and Martina's career, for that matter. And I think she got the best of the both of them probably more times than not, but she was a fantastic player. And I wasn't a huge fan of hers, but I certainly respected her game and her achievements. Now, I think once she started dating Agassi, because I was a big Agassi fan. So I think once they got involved, I started to like her more because of him. But during her heyday, I wasn't a huge Steffi Graf fan, but like I said, certainly respected and appreciated what she achieved during her run. And it was relatively short because, like I said, I think she was only like 30 when she retired. And I'm pretty sure she probably could have played at least a few more years at a high level. But, I think she left pretty much on top or close to it. And what a better way to go out.
Yeah, her last year she won a major.
I mean, hey.
So she lost the major and she finished second at Wimbledon her last year before she retired. So, yeah, you've hollered at her very well. I'll just speak on a personal level. I loved her. And I watched her last match and I almost cried. So I liked about her so much was the fact in tennis in general, I like players who are understated, who control their emotions, who just get the business, kick your butt, and then move on. And that's how a lot of old players work. Chris Evert was like that, which I didn't like Martina because she was being Chris Evert. I like Steffi Graf because she was clutch. But I'll tell you why Steffi Graf was able to do what she did. Not only did she have all the attributes, there was emerging technology that was happening, some metal rackets were happening, and she was super duper fast. And what she would do, if she had a killer slice, her forehand was legendary. But when she's out of point, she would slice the ball, give her a chance to get back into position, use her speed to get back into the rally. And she did that time and time again. And it was such clutch that it was just something where you just couldn't really. She forced you to make mistakes, where she didn't make unforced errors. And if you're playing tennis, if you don't have forced errors, unforced errors, you're going to win most of your matches because tennis is not about pressure. There's pressure in everything. There's pressure when you have 40-40 at deuce. There's pressure when you have a tiebreaker. There's pressure when you have a break point, which means you're trying to break the other person's serve. And there's always pressure in tennis at different levels. And if you control your emotions and reduce unforced errors, you're going to win. And I can't stand people who choke. So that's why I like Steffi Graf so much. But I do like Monica Seles because she was beating Steffi Graf because she had the oversized racket. She was screaming and yelling and fast and younger. And when Monica Seles got stabbed, that actually allowed Steffi Graf to win more majors because had not Monica Seles gotten stabbed on the court, she would have cut Steffi Graf's career probably by a fourth because Monica Seles was so dominant. So, but I still like Steffi Graf, and I can see why people don't put her there because Serena and whatever. But the other thing I'll say about her is that the Australian Open, if you look at this thing here, she didn't really participate in the Australian Open early on because not people were really talking about that as a major. It was a major, but they were really considering it as a major. So she didn't take it seriously. So had she taken it seriously, she missed many Australian Opens. If you look at here, she missed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. She didn't go to any of them. So had she gone to them, she probably could have won 2 or 3 of those, and she would have been past Margaret Court. So, but yeah, Steffi Graf, amazing player. My biggest regret is that their children, Agassi and Steffi Graf, their kids don't want to play tennis. So I'm upset by that. So
how is that possible? I think I recall seeing commercials where they were playing tennis with their kids, unless I'm completely remembering that wrong. I can't remember what the commercial was, but I seem to remember a commercial where they were playing with their kids or maybe even playing tennis with their kids. But it's whether I'm remembering that correctly or not, I know I saw a commercial, something like that. But yeah, it's amazing that their kids didn't play tennis. I mean, the DNA that they have as far as, just all-time great tennis players is just remarkable. You would think that would be a no-brainer, but, it looks like they wanted to get into other things, and that's certainly okay. But yeah, just a little surprising that they didn't, pick up the game having parents like that.
They should force them out of the will if they don't play tennis.
They would have been scary good, I'm sure. If
Oh yeah, can you imagine?
Oh yeah.
So we got two left. So Serena or Martina, who you want to go next?
Well,
They're both in my top four.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Serena because for me, Martina's the GOAT in my opinion.
Okay.
So I'll go with Serena. So I think Serena is probably going to be more familiar to people today because she just recently retired. And I think in the minds of younger people, she's the GOAT. But I mean, you got to look at it in context. That's probably, out of all of the players we mentioned, that's probably the only one they've ever seen play. So they don't have anything else to compare her to. So Serena, and we know about her growing up and how her father was very instrumental in getting her and her sister Venus involved in tennis. I think there was a movie about that. I didn't see it, but
I haven't either. No.
Yeah, but I know the story in general, how pivotal their father was in them growing up and playing tennis in the environment they grew up. So Serena was ranked number 1 in singles for 319 weeks, including a joint record 186 consecutive weeks, and finished as the year-end number 1 5 times. She won 23 Grand Slam women's singles titles, the most in the Open era, and the second most of all time. I think Margaret Court has the record. I think she won 24. She is the only player to accomplish a career Golden Slam in both singles and doubles. From the 2002 French Open to the 2003 Australian Open, she was dominant, winning all 4 major singles titles, each time over Venus, to achieve both a career Grand Slam and a non-calendar year Grand Slam known as the Serena Slam. She won 14 major women's doubles titles, all with her sister. They were almost unbeatable at doubles. They were
unbeatable.
They should have been banned. I mean, they were that good at doubles. And the pair was unbeaten in major doubles finals, the best unbeaten record in major finals in any discipline of the sport. The sisters achieved a non-calendar year Grand Slam between the 2009 Wimbledon Championships and the 2010 French Open, which granted the sisters the doubles world number 1 ranking. Williams was the world's highest paid woman athlete in 2016, earning almost $29 million. That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
She repeated this feat in 2017 when she was the only woman on the Forbes list of the 100 highest paid athletes, with $27 million in prize money and endorsements. In 2020, the Tennis Channel ranked Williams as the greatest female tennis player in history. She is the highest earning woman athlete of all time. Now, I've seen quite a few of her matches. I can't say that I've seen her play as much as Martina or Steffi or Chris Evert. Like I said, I watched a lot more tennis than I do now. Really never liked Serena. She's an absolutely fantastic player. I don't want to minimize what she's achieved. Certainly, I mean, she's number 2 for me, so I can put aside my dislike for her as a player to recognize her greatness as a player. Her athleticism and her power, I mean, the way she hit the ball was just scary. And as powerful as her legs are and just the way she can move around the court was just phenomenal to watch. And when she dominated, it was like whoever it was she was playing just had no chance to beat her.
Yeah.
And when she was in her prime, because if you remember, in the beginning, Venus would beat her all the time.
Yep.
And then that flipped to where Venus couldn't touch her. I mean, it was just incredible how she progressed to, surpass Venus. And I think Venus gets a raw deal as far as where she is placed in history as far as women's players. Venus was a fantastic player too. She just got overshadowed by Serena because she just kind of vaulted past her. But
she got 10 majors.
Yeah. So So you can't
singles.
Yeah. You can't shortchange Venus. She was a great player as well. But Serena, I mean, just so many things have been said about her. Her tantrums, that's one of the things that turns me off about her, and the way she acted when, and I know we talked about Naomi.
Naomi. Yeah.
Yeah. I was actually texting you, if you remember, during that.
I remember.
Yeah. I remember. And I was just not believing.
I did a video on it.
Yeah. You sure did. And I couldn't believe just how childish she was acting. And I'm like, I've never seen a meltdown like this. And the last time I saw a meltdown like that, it was her. I mean, she was involved. So just her behavior on the court, especially when she's losing, it's like, come on. You've got, I'm sure little girls, young players watching you. And like we said so many times on this show, kids do what they see the pros do. So if they see Serena acting like that, guess what? They're likely to act like that too. And I just felt so bad for Osaka. I mean,
I did too.
She had the biggest victory of her career.
Oh my gosh.
It was just
horrible.
Yeah, ruined by Serena's temper tantrum to the point she was just in tears. And I think that kind of opened a window to Osaka and how frail she was emotionally. I mean, it was just so hard to watch that. I just felt so bad for her. And again, I hope she can get to a point, I think, with her mental health and the other things that she's dealing with, where she can get back and play at a top level. But even if she doesn't, I want her wellness to be in a good place, because that's the most important thing. But she is a phenomenal player, and I hope she can get back to where not only she's at the top of her game, but where she's enjoying the game as well. But back to Serena, I don't want to take anything from her. Her behavior leaves a lot to be desired, but when she is at her best, especially, nowadays and during her era, there were a whole lot of women that could even compete with her. Now, these younger girls like Coco Gauff, I guess, and Osaka, and what's that other young lady's name? Keys, I think her last name is, and
Madison Keys,
yeah, and that group, they're fun to watch. And I think as they came along, players like that gave her a harder time. They're young, they could run all day. They're running her all over the court. And let's be honest, later in her career, she wasn't in the greatest of shape. And, she tired toward the end of the matches. And basically, that's what Osaka did to her. And, but, again, I don't want to take anything away from Serena. I'm just speaking to how, this younger group of girls gave her problems. And it's no different than the other ladies we talked about later in their careers, when younger, stronger, faster ladies came along. It was harder and harder for them to win. And this is no different. Father Time is undefeated, as they say. But you can stand Serena's accomplishments and championships and wins against anybody's. And for me, she's number 2. And, again, that's not a challenge for me because I can put aside my feelings as far as, how she is on the court to say that, she's right up there. And what a fantastic career that just recently ended. I think she only retired like a couple years ago or something. So yeah, she had a fantastic career and she's right up there for me.
Yeah, she's number 2 for me as well. I hate to say that, but she is. And the numbers, you just can't mess with the numbers. I've gone through the career records of all the women's tennis players, and she's in the top 2 or 3 in just about all of them. Steffi Graf, if you look at the numbers, is better than her in singles overall. But if you throw in the doubles, you got to put her in there as 1 or 2. You just can't ignore her. My problem with Serena Williams is her mind. My favorite players of all time are Steffi Graf, maybe Chris Evert-Lloyd, Venus Williams, and then Simona Halep. Probably that order. So I love Venus Williams. I think she's great, but she's the all-around finesse player. She's a little bit taller than Serena. I think Venus is 6 foot. I think Venus is 6 foot. I think Serena is like 5'10", 5'9", which is huge for a woman. So she had that, but her mind wasn't quite there. She would fall apart. But she had the skill set and the youth and the speed and everything else to overcome it. And her serve break, her serve is probably the greatest serve in women's tennis history, because not only was it fast, powerful, and scary, it was clutch. When she started yelling and screaming and crap, you knew you were in trouble. So when she was on, nobody could touch her. The best you could do is hold on and hope she cracks. And then when she was dealing with that deal with U.S. Open with Osaka, her skills were depleting, but it was still the U.S. Open at night. It was her tournament, her favorite tournament. A lot of pressure to tie the record, and she just couldn't do it. So all that pressure, I think it was building up on her. I'm not giving her an excuse. But what happened was, this is what happened. Her coach gave a sign, and in tennis, you can do it now, but you couldn't then. Give signs or coach your players. He was telling her to go to the net, and I'm watching it. Every single time she went to the net, she was winning the point. And I knew it. The coach knew it. The coach told her it via a sign to go to the net. And then the judge or the chair umpire said, "You're cheating. Duck the point, whatever." And it just, and then the whole tantrum came through. And so they asked the coach at the end of the press conference. They were like, "Yeah, so did you give her a sign?" He said, "Yeah." I was coaching her. He admitted it. So it was an excuse. He admitted it. And that's now, I think that's why now they allow coaching now, because of that whole incident. But I like her for the fact that she's not socially just as woke. She does say things that are reasonable. And so I appreciate her for that. But on the court, I just couldn't stand her because she would choke. She would just fall apart. Sometimes she could come out of it with a killer serve and intimidate people. But when she couldn't intimidate anymore, she would lose. And so one of her biggest beatdowns, which I love watching this match on YouTube, it's Simona Halep versus Serena Williams, the finals of Wimbledon, and Simona Halep beat her like a drum. I think she only had like 7 or 8 unforced errors for the entire match. Unprecedented, really, at Wimbledon, and beat her like a drum. And I love that match because I like to see people handle the business without all the theatrics, and Simona Halep definitely did that. So, right. So that's my take on Serena Williams. Do you want to move on to the number 1, which is my number 2? I'm number 3.
Yeah. So one other thing I wanted to say about Serena that you kind of reminded me of is some of the things that she said off the court. And the things that she says off the court don't bother me. I think she's a different person off the court. And I think she was on some kind of late night talk show, and the host, and I can't remember which one it was, I think asked her, "Oh yeah, who would win between you and I think Roger Federer or something?" And she's like, "He'd win 6-love, 6-love." She goes, "I would not have a chance against him, because at that point, and I think to some level, even now, it's like, okay, who would win between, the top women's player and a top men's player, even a top men's player that may not be active at that point? Because I think there was several years ago, John McEnroe and Serena were going back and forth about, okay, who would win? And John McEnroe goes, I'd win. Even at that age, you go, I'd win. And I don't doubt he would have. So I think she was realistic in that regard. And again, when we talk about the battle of the sexes, but I think they were talking in terms of a straight up tennis match, who would win. And she's like, Federer, I think it was Federer they were talking about. Yeah, he beat me 6-love. It wouldn't even be a contest. So from that perspective, she's down to earth and realistic as far as what her abilities are. If she were put up against a man, but against the women, I mean, she cleaned house there for a long, long time, and she should absolutely be proud of the career she's had. So I think you said my number one is your number two, so I'll go ahead and talk about...
Oh, no, sorry, my number four.
Oh, you're number four, okay.
Yeah.
So my number one is Martina Navratilova, and as you mentioned, I was not a fan of hers at all. I never liked her. She won a lot, and she beat Chris Evert a lot, and she got really fit like in the early 80s, and she really dominated at that point, especially Chris Evert. Martina won 18 major singles titles, 31 major women's doubles titles, and 10 major mixed doubles titles, for a combined total of 59 major titles, the most in the Open era, alongside Chris Evert, her greatest rival. Navratilova dominated, and that's an understatement, women's tennis for the first 2/3 of the 1980s. So Martina was ranked as the world's number one in singles for a total of 332 weeks. Second only to Steffi Graf. I mean, they're only 52 weeks in a year. So, I mean, 4 years. And for a record 237 weeks in doubles, making her the only player in history to have held the top spot in both disciplines for over 200 weeks. She won 157 top-level singles titles and 177 doubles titles, both open-era records. She won a record 6 consecutive singles majors across 1983 and 1984 by simultaneously winning the Grand Slam in doubles. Navratilova claims the best professional season winning percentage, 8.8% in 1983, going 86-1 for the season. She lost once, and the longest all-surface winning streak of 74 straight match wins, 74 in a row. She reached the Wimbledon singles finals 12 times, including for 9 consecutive years from 82 through 90, and won the title a record 9 times. Navratilova is one of the 3 tennis players, along with, again, Margaret Court and Doris Hart, to have accomplished a career Grand Slam in singles, doubles, and mixed doubles, called the career boxed set. She won her last major, her last major title, the mixed doubles crown, at the 2006 U.S. Open, shortly before her 50th birthday, and 32 years after her first major title in '74. From 82, 83, and 84, Navratilova lost a total of only 6 singles matches. 6 in like 3 years. This included, this included a run of 13 consecutive victories over Chris Evert. The 74 match winning streak in 1984. We talked about that. But if you can beat Chris Evert 13 times in a row, I mean, and she was number 2 in the world at that time, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, and she dominated her. And I think we mentioned this a little earlier. In September 92, the then 35-year-old Navratilova played 40-year-old Jimmy Connors in the third battle of the sexes at Caesars Palace in Paradise, Nevada. Connors was allowed only 1 serve per point, and Navratilova was allowed to hit into half the doubles court, and Connors won 7-5. She retired.
Equalizer.
Yeah. She retired full-time from singles competition at 37, but she played doubles until she was almost 50. So, when I think about dominant women's players, the first player I think of is her. Because out of all the players that we've talked about tonight, between her and Chris Evert, I watch them the most. And a lot of times I watch them play each other. And to see there in the early and mid 80s, just how much better she was than Chris Evert. And we talked about her. Chris Evert was no slouch, even at that point in her career. And Martina just dominated her. And I'm not just talking about close, man. I'm talking about just totally dominated. Now, some of those matches were fairly close, but, some of the other ones weren't close at all. And that just speaks to Martina's preparation, her ability, her focus. It was just amazing to watch. And the whole time I just could not stand it. But much like with Serena, I didn't like Martina as a player, but later on, I think even during her career, she would do, I think, some studio analyst work. I think she did a little bit of broadcasting, but whenever they had her in that capacity, she was great talking about tennis. I mean, she was really good. So I liked her in that capacity, if I'm remembering correctly, as far as, some analysis work or some studio work or wherever it was. So when she talked tennis, I could listen all day long because it was really good. But, watching her on the court, I just did not like her because, hey, she just won all the time as far as I was concerned. But she's number 1 for me. And I know in the minds of a lot of people, she's right up there. She dominated during a time in tennis where she had a lot of competition. We named some of the ones that she was competing against at that time. And I'm trying to think some of the other ones that we did not mention. I think during that time, Mary Jo Fernandez, maybe, and there were a few other ones. When did Zina Garrison come along? Did she come along a little later than that? You remember her?
Was she black?
Yeah.
I think a little bit later. I hadn't heard her name in a long time.
Oh, yeah. She was good too. But, there were quite a long list of women that were very good players, but they didn't look like it when they played Martina. I mean, she was very dominant for a very long stretch of time, and she was great at doubles too. Certainly one of the best of all time when it comes to that. So just overall excellence in the different disciplines of tennis. And basically, she was at a place where all the other women on the circuit, they had to up their game. And I think she was good for women's tennis for that, because I don't know that women up to that point worked out and were as intense with fitness like she was. And I think I remember Chris Evert saying that she really had to up her game from a fitness and workout perspective just to compete with Martina. And I think some of the other women realized that as well. So when you have somebody like Martina to set the bar that high, it can only be good for the game overall because it inspires and forces the other ones to up their game and do the same. So Martina, the greatest for me, and I can certainly go along with, any of the other ones that we talked about, especially the Mount Rushmore picks as far as, being the greatest. It's a short list for sure, but for me, she's number one, and I think well-deserved in the minds of a lot of people.
Yeah, I think she's a good person too. I think she is. So
yeah,
and she's especially when she's coming out against this whole thing with men playing women's tennis. She's totally against that.
She's totally against it. Yeah,
more activism towards that, and I think that's commendable. And she's getting a lot of flack. And like the greatest player in tennis of all time, arguably, and you're trying to tell. And one of the most fit players of all time, women, you're trying to tell me that she should know what she's talking about.
She absolutely does.
Because if any man would be if any woman could beat any man, it would be her. Her and maybe Serena.
Yeah. She.
Those two are the most fit people, and maybe a Sakari, but her mind game is terrible. But she's probably the most fit tennis player of all time. Sakari. She's a current player now. She's ridiculous. She's CrossFit, all this stuff, but she just can't play between years.
Right.
Well, she's a top 10 player, but it is what it is. But yeah, there's very few women that physically that you look at and say, you know what, I'll put her up against a dude and give her a shot to win.
Yeah, you just can't find one. But to your point, if you had to pick one that might would have a chance, Martina would be one, and Seles would be the other. Yeah.
I'll take Martina. I'll take Martina 1984 on grass against any male today. Well, not any male, any amateur male today.
Yeah, that would be something.
And give it a shot.
Yep.
So, but check this out. Just make you feel a little better. So, see 3 losses here from Martina. For the French, they were all the Chris Evert. Chris Evert whooped her tail on clay. She was it. Now she did beat her. She did beat her on grass here and on grass here. She beat Andrea Jaeger. And the reason why is because that serve and volley, man, that grass is fast, and if you have a good serve, you can volley. She played doubles, and as a double player, you get one back, one up. They're close to the net. They have good hands. They know how to volley. A volley means basically hitting the ball out of the air. And so that's what she was really good at. And so, she was just phenomenal. At one point, she's not even playing in the French. I think Chris maybe got to quit playing with the French because it's a very difficult surface for big ball hitters on French. Because no matter how hard you hit the ball bounces up, comes up. He's like, I thought I hit it hard. No, the clay softens up and bounces it high.
Slower pace, yeah.
That's what it does. So it's a very grueling thing too. So I was gonna say one more thing about I was gonna say that the players of her era were Virginia Wade, Tracy Austin, Hada, Malika Buck, these are all Hall of Famers, Rosie Casal, Pam Shriver, and a little bit of Steffi Graf. But yeah, that's a serious level of competition she had to go through. And you may be down on the bottom maybe. But yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, it's very, very lot of competition, like actually as you were saying. So, this has been a fun conversation. I really enjoyed this.
I definitely have too, because I haven't talked tennis really with anybody in a long time. I mean, it was something that I certainly enjoyed watching when I was a lot younger, and to talk about those players, especially the ones that I more or less grew up watching, it's been fun because it just kind of reminds me and takes me back to that time, when they played and when they were on top of the tennis world. So yeah, I'm glad we had a chance to talk about it. It's different from what we've been talking about. And I look forward to, straying from what we've normally talked about up to this point and getting into some different things. But yeah, women's tennis, And I think for quite a few years, to me, women's tennis has been more exciting than men's tennis. I mean, in my mind. So I'm glad that we've gotten a chance to talk about it, and looking forward to talking about it at some point in the future. So yeah, it's been a good conversation.
Yeah, me too. And so I really enjoyed this as well. And I'll say really quickly, I try and be quick on this. The reason why women's tennis back then was more competitive and more fun to watch, because you always get the top seeds to come up. The parity wasn't quite there back then. They were good players, but they're all at the top of the heap. So you would get your Steffis, your Martinas, your Agassis, your Seleses, your Grafs all together, clumped up and playing those finals. And so that's what you have. Today, the parity in women's tennis is so massive that I enjoy women's tennis today more so, and men's tennis today. The simple fact that you don't have, I love Djokovic, don't get me wrong, but now you no longer have Nadal, you no longer have Federer, you no longer have any Murray or Roddick, those guys. It's a new class of players, and the parity in men's tennis is great too. So I'm having a great time watching my 8 hours of tennis a week. So at the minimum. So anyway, yeah, Greg, I appreciate that. If you guys enjoyed this, let us know. Send us questions to podcast@theconservativetake.com. That's podcast@theconservativetake.com. And Greg, anything else you want to say before I close this out?
No, I think that pretty much does it for me. But again, it's been fun talking women's tennis. And I think the last time I talked about tennis was with you. So, all the better, because I know how much you love tennis, especially today. I don't watch it nearly as much as I used to, but when tennis was really good, in my mind, for both the men and the women, like from, early mid 70s, like right up to the 90s, yeah, there was nothing better for me. It was just so much fun watching all of those great players and some of the great characters of the game too. I know this is, a little bit off topic, but watching somebody like Jimmy Connors, especially that run he had at the U.S. Open, I think, when was it, 91 or 92, when he was like 39 and had to get in with a wild card and got all the way to, I think, like the quarterfinals or something, and he upset Patrick McEnroe, and there's a 30 for 30 on that, I think. That's really good. Yeah. And to just relive that run was just an incredible experience. I really enjoyed watching that. So yeah, he was my favorite men's player.
Yeah. Because people hated him, but they ingratiated themselves to him. They ingratiated himself, and he became a fan favorite there. But 10 years earlier, people hated him.
They absolutely did. And I mean, but they loved him in New York. I mean, they were just going bonkers when he had that last run. And I think the catchphrase then was, "This is what they came to see," or something like that. Actually, I think that's what the name of the 30 for 30 was, or something similar to that. But yeah, before McEnroe came along, Connors was kind of the brat. He argued with umpires and he'd yell at his opponent.
He would fight you. Unlike McEnroe, he'd fight you.
Oh, yeah. He was a tough guy. Yeah, he was something. And yeah, he was my guy. He was something.
Yeah.
And the funny thing about him was when they had that, I don't know what better to call it than the seniors tour for the Nuveen tour. Remember that?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
He dominated. I mean, I mean, he was beating everybody. He dominated more on that tour, I think, than he did the regular tour. I mean, he was beating guys like, Stefan Edberg. He beat McEnroe bad. One of those other guys. I don't know if Venus Gerald played on that tour or not, but guys like that, I mean, he was beating handily. I mean, he was really good for years after he stopped playing the regular tour. So Jimmy Connors, he's a fascinating guy. And again, just really fun to watch. But yeah, thank you for bringing up this topic of women's tennis. It's been a lot of fun to talk about, and it's good to reminisce, especially back during a time when, to me, tennis for both men and women were just so great and so much fun to watch.
It was great back then. It's good now. It was great back then.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's it. I hope you enjoyed this top 5 greatest tennis female players of all time. I really enjoyed it. It's my favorite sport right now. And if you did, comment below and let us know. If you have questions that you would like to have answered, we will do so if you email us at podcast@theconservativetake.com. That's podcast@theconservativetake.com. We will answer those questions in a future episode. And with that being said, I hope you guys have a great day, and we'll see you in the next one.